Did you know that the Gardener's Workshop offers cut flower seeds? Our hand-picked selection includes only the varieties we grow in our own fields and gardens, and each pack is printed with our exclusive growing tips and insights. So visit us at thegardenersworkshop.com today. The Gardener's Workshop, turning all thumbs green.
Everyone, good morning. Good morning from Oregon. This is Lennie Larkin here, taking over for the Gardener's Workshop, doing the Ask a Flower Farmer live. So I'm coming to you from sunny Oregon. It's been raining and cold here for like a week, which, you know, isn't the worst news actually for us. It's given us a chance to like step back and reset on the farm a little bit. We're not growing very much this year here at B-Side Farm. We moved up from California a few years ago and are just still building up the new farm, planting woodies, planting perennials. I bet a lot of you can relate. And I also have an education business called Flower Farming for Profit, where I coach and teach new and aspiring and established flower farmers. So I wrote a book of the same name, Flower Farming for Profit, that came out like 2 years ago now. And if you haven't read it, I'll tell you, it is a great book. It's a great book. It's a great read. I have it on my bookshelf next to Lisa's books, all my favorite books together. So here I am, you guys. Great questions for me revolve around anything having to do with sales, marketing, strategy, and the business behind your flower farm. So there's so many wonderful people out there to teach you how to grow your flowers, like Lisa, like Dave, like all these people. And I focus on sort of a different aspect. I focus on how to gain the confidence to put yourself out there, how to build a strategic flower farm where you are using all the data you have and you can find to make the best decisions for you, knowing that we all are in different markets with different strengths and weaknesses and different possibilities. So I really focus in my courses, on my book, and in my coaching programs, I focus on helping farmers navigate these forks in the road and these challenges, whether it, deals with evaluating if a new sales channel is the right one for you. That was a lot of unnecessary big words. Choosing where to sell your flowers, choosing what to grow and who to sell them to, and then how to get them out there. That is sort of what I focus on. But anything is fair game. Feel free to try to stump me here. Okay, let's see this question here. So I'm really struggling to find out my price per stem. Also, what crops are going to make me the most money? Ooh, this is a juicy one. All right, let's dive in. So pricing, right? What do I charge for my flowers? This is like the biggest question out there. But the elephant in the room for the rest of us, for those who have been there, is that you are probably charging too little. If you're starting out, if you fit any one of these, if any of these like sound like you, if you can, respond in the affirmative to any of these, you're probably charging too little. If you're just getting started, if you're insecure in your abilities, if you are second guessing your pricing all the time, if you are working around the clock to get this little flower farm, to get it some legs, right? To get it off the ground. If you are worried about what people are going to think about your flowers, if you are any of those things, or if you're just a new flower farmer, period, you're probably charging too little. And why do I have the confidence to just kind of like give you this blanket statement? It's because I've seen it. I've seen it time and again and again and again and again. And there's been like 2 new flower farmers ever who have proven me wrong. And as you move into your business, into year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, as you move forward in your business, you'll start realizing that there are more costs than you imagined. There is disease and insects and crop failures that are going to start eating into your profits, even if you didn't have those problems in the beginning. You're going to start to spend time on things, or spend time and spend money on different tasks in your business that you didn't have to do in the beginning, like bookkeeping, or you're going to start paying a bookkeeper. All these things are going to start to show you that this is a pretty expensive kind of business to run. Not in the way that some other businesses are. Of course, there's like low barriers to entry. A lot of people, most anyone can kind of start growing flowers and selling them, right? But it's your time. You're going to find that you're working around the clock just to keep the farm weeded. And what about all the other stuff you need to do? So all to say, it's expensive to run a farm. So it's challenging to figure out what to charge. And I'm pretty confident telling you guys you need to charge more. So here are some ways to get started figuring out your pricing. I will not leave you hanging with this question. And you've probably heard a lot of these answers, and the truth is there's no like secret magic bullet secret answer, you know? The great way to start is to try to get a sense of how much flowers are being sold for in your area. And I know you've probably heard this, right? But it's the truth. It's the truth. You can do this by talking to other farmers. No, not everyone is going to receive this question very, happily. If you are a new farmer and you are trying to ask all the established farmers about their secret price list. But a lot of people don't see this as secret. And a lot of people, if they have a minute, if you ask them in a calm and respectful and straightforward way, rather than asking them to give you all their time for free, right? Because they probably don't have much time either. People want to help people. Flower farmers want to help other flower farmers. If you reach out to other farmers in your area and you say, listen, I'm starting my flower farm. I'm having trouble figuring out what to charge. I really don't want to undercut anyone. So could you give me a sense of how much is the going rate for these 5 flowers, right? Anything like that. So I like to compare the price, the wholesale to florist price. It's just a good baseline. So you might be like, how much do you sell a 10-stem bunch of ranunculus for? And then from there, you can figure out other pricing, how you would sell it to other types of customers, right? But if you can't find other flower farmers in your area, you might be able to find a local wholesaler in your area. They also are called, wholesale florists. Also, they go by that term, which is sometimes confusing. They sometimes go by the term distributor too. If not, there are more kind of national wholesalers or ones located remotely that you can order in for shipping. So you could try to get a sense of their prices too. There's Mayesh, there's the Floral Source. There's lots of great businesses that ship flowers or that might have a branch near you in the case of Mayesh. So you can kind of find that baseline. Like, what are these flowers sold for when they're in the peak of their season? Let's take ranunculus as an example, right? What's the going rate to florists in my area? And of course, we're not always comparing apples to apples, right? There might be imported flowers that have chemicals all over them, that have a shorter vase life than yours. So those things might make your flowers jump to the top of the pack. You could hopefully charge more because yours are local. Maybe they're organic, they're grown sustainably, they're not doused in chemicals, but maybe yours are shorter, and the ones listed that are imported or from somewhere far away have a longer stem length. There's all these factors that can change the going rate. And in general, I'm pretty confident that you will be able to charge a little bit more for your flowers. In some locations, for some crops, maybe you can charge a lot more. But I like to say, if you can get a sense of some local pricing, maybe 2 different price lists or 2 price points. You find there's a wholesaler near you and ranunculus is selling for $16 a bunch to local florists. And then you find another big farm near you and they're selling to florists for $18. So you can at least find an average there. And then you can say, okay, if I set at that point, I know that I'm going to be competitive with others. And you know what? Maybe I know something about those other flowers. Maybe I've seen them and they don't last that long. Or maybe I know that I grow these really special ranunculus in special colors that the florists are just crazy for.Maybe I'm going to price mine a little higher. So in general, I would hope that you would get a sense of this local pricing and price yours a little bit higher, knowing that there's a million caveats, right? So then we have that pricing. And how does that help you if you're not selling to florists, if you're just selling at the farmer's market or a farm stand? Basically, the price is only going to go up. So let's take back that ranunculus example. So if I found an average price, maybe it would be $17 a bunch. Funny, I should mention that because we just delivered a bunch of ranunculus to the OFGA this morning at that same price point, $17 a bunch. So if I was selling straight to the public rather than selling wholesale to a florist, my price would only need to go up from 17, right? And then that's when we talk about kind of multiples or X factors, We know that wedding flowers are marked up 3, 4, 5 times to account for all the other labor that goes into a wedding. But if I'm just selling in a more casual way through a farm stand, at a farmer's market, maybe through CSA bouquets, I'm probably not going to mark up the flowers 3, 4, 5 times, right? But I would love it if you guys were marking them up 2 times at least. In some areas, at some times, for some crops, that doesn't feel possible. I used to mark up my flowers 3 times to sell at my farm stand. So if I was selling a bunch of ranunculus, I'm going to use easy numbers here. Let's say I was selling them for $15 to a florist. I would mark those up to, you guessed it, $45 to sell at my farm stand. These were incorporated into mixed bouquets, so that's part of the reason I could get that markup. The other reason is that the wholesale prices back in California were really low, so marking up 3 times felt good, right? Felt good to me, felt good to my customers. In a lot of other parts of the country, wholesale flowers are sold at a higher level because there's less competition for flowers. And then you might get a lower markup. So let's say you, in your area, ranunculus are selling to florists for $20 a bunch. Maybe you're only marking up 2 times to the retail price point, meaning you would sell that bunch for $40 to the public through your farm stand or through the farmer's market. I know if you're hearing this and if you're following me, because that was a lot of examples, you're like, I could never sell a bunch of ranunculus for that much. The public around me doesn't care about flowers that much. I haven't really made a name for myself yet, or I have, but there's so many other people selling flowers for dirt cheap, it feels impossible to mark up my flowers that much. I totally get you. But what I'm going to tell you is that I want you to start working towards that anyways. Like, if you keep selling at low prices, in a few years you might be out of business. And the people who you think are your biggest, most supportive customers right now, if you think they wouldn't pay slightly higher prices, they might not be the customers who are going to take your farm to that next level, right? When we get started, we have to just choose a price. So if you're out there just wondering, like, okay, Lennie, but how do I know what to charge? How do I price these flowers? Like, you just need to choose a price and not second guess it, not worry that people are going to think it's too expensive. The people who think it's too expensive might not be your customers. And your branding, your design skills, your communication style about your business, and more than anything, your confidence, these things are all going to get better. They're going to improve. So you need to start setting your prices that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, knowing that you're going to grow into them. And you're not only doing the rest of us in the industry a favor by charging appropriately high for your flowers, but also you're setting up your farm for success. I mean, the whole reason I became a business coach and a teacher rather than just a full-time farmer is because I saw so many farms around me going out of business. Like farms that I've looked up to for years, either going out of business or just telling us behind the scenes that they were struggling, that they weren't making money, that people needed to go and take day jobs or go back to their old career because farming was just too hard. And can we solve all those challenges by just raising our prices? No, of course not. But it is a good starting point, and it's something like now that I've taught literally hundreds of people, and everyone else who has taught hundreds of people, Lisa, Dave, Ellen, Frost, they'll all tell you this, that most of us, most flower farmers, I'm talking 99%, are charging too little in the beginning. And you're doing this because you're kind, because you're a people pleaser, because you're insecure, because you don't want to piss off your community, because you're like, well, who am I anyways? I just grew these in the backyard. Like, I know that because I've been there. But you just have to start taking these little steps towards pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. Okay, let's see another question. Someone's asking about thrips. Just real quick, I'll say that thrips are becoming like an even bigger issue for so many of us. They're also just really bad here in the Pacific Northwest. For me, they were really bad in California, but that just meant that they impacted, my white roses. Tranquility, that garden rose from David Austin, like such a good rose, but I couldn't, and so big, so prolific, so abundant, the yield was like off the charts, but the thrips just attacked it so that all of the flowers turned brown. That was like my biggest experience with thrips in California. I mean, it was on other crops too, but it decimated that. But here it's on like everything. It's on everything. So of course, beneficials is super key. Sarah Head, who's now on the ASCFG board, which is amazing. She has Eda Creek Farm, has been teaching some programs around IPM and just beneficials for dealing with insects, and I know she talks about thrips a lot. She's become an expert in this, and she's done some grant-funded research, and she's just got a really great, robust way of helping you guys learn how to deal with this stuff. And it's not just about, randomly like releasing some beneficial insects at a random time. There are specific beneficial insects and predators that are best for certain areas, and specifically based on soil temperature and air temperature too as well. So, we just, I sort of freak out every spring and I think, okay, I don't have a pest management program in place. What can I do? And I try to go back to all my notes and figure out what I did before, what I could do now. This year, I called my friend Janine at Future Farm, who I knew had been talking to Sarah, and also just, working with other colleagues to try to figure out how to best approach this with an ecological mindset, of course, right? And so she shared with me an awesome little guide that she had made for her farm. This is just something cool that she did for her farm. I think we should all do the same, reminding her what to do when. Okay, so soil temperature is this cold. This is when I can still be releasing this beneficial. This is how many times I should release it. When the soil heats up, I should move on to this. And this is something that is different depending on where you live and what you're dealing with. But that's a great recommendation. It's to start having a kind of multifaceted approach and really base it on your specific conditions. Okay, let's go to this question here. What are your favorite perennials to grow for either cut foliage or flowers? Ooh, so many. Okay, so for foliage, I would be nowhere without raspberry to carry me all through, like from early spring into early summer, sometimes midsummer, and then eucalyptus to carry me from midsummer all the way through fall. Like if you have those two crops growing, you're golden. Your bouquets are going to be amazing if you're a bouquet type farm. They both are branchy. They take up good space in the bouquet. They're pretty profitable for most of us. So they are, sort of easy to grow and sort of low fuss. That's kind of what makes them profitable. Also, they're high yield. They throw a lot of stems. So you can mix them in, especially like spring bouquets that are just packed with value. I bet you have experienced this where you're trying to make a bouquet for farmer's market or the farm stand or for wherever, and it's like chock full of tulips and ranunculus. And it feels so small. It feels like a skimpy bouquet, but you're counting the stems and you're like, this bouquet is like $30 even in wholesale flowers. But I think my customers aren't going to want to pay that much because the bouquet is so small, because these flowers are also expensive. How do you get around that? You mix in some cheaper stems, you guys. You find something like raspberry that's going to take up space in the bouquet, and then you are increasing the perceived value of the bouquet to the customer because it's bigger, it's fluffier, it's more varied, right? It looks like an arrangement rather than just a bunch of flowers. And you are making more money. It's a more profitable bouquet for you. Sometimes maybe you're taking out 3 stems of ranunculus in your initial bouquet you tried to make, and you're replacing it with 1 branchy stem of raspberry. The customer is going to look at it like the same or even better, and you are losing less money and making more money. Other perennials. So my mind right now is on a bunch of spring stuff. We're planting a little shade garden, and I'm trying to source and plant all the stuff I used to grow at my old farm in California, but we had to leave behind because of space. So I'm thinking, we've got a bunch of hellebores going in, a bunch of astilbe, Japanese anemones, lady's mantle, and Solomon seal. Those are my kind of shade perennials. And then moving into summer, I love sedum and I love yarrow as I call them, branchy fillers. They take up space in a bouquet. Sometimes sedum takes up a little too much space in a bouquet. It's like the cauliflower of the flower world. Those are some great perennials. What else do I love? I love having little bits of a bunch of specialty stuff that can make your arrangements or bouquets stand apart, even if they're not the bulk of the flowers you grow, or you have a bunch of mixed beds with just small amounts of them. Things like geum and columbine and astrantia, things like that. And I love big bridal wreath, bridal veil spirea, really any kind of spirea you can get your hand on. Viburnum that you can use as green foliage in the spring and then kind of autumn foliage in, you guessed it, the autumn. And hydrangeas of all kinds. Those are some of my favorites. Let's see what other questions we have. Do you ever meet up with local flower farmers and do in-person classes? Aw, thanks for asking. I used to teach in person a lot. Actually used to teach, I moved to the West Coast originally 15 years ago to learn how to teach farming at the farm and garden program at UC Santa Cruz. So I like trained there for a year and then worked there for a year. And then I've been teaching farming ever since, but for the first number of years it was in person at an educational farm that I used to run, and then at Santa Rosa Junior College I used to teach college horticulture, and of course all kinds of workshops on my farm. Now I teach so much online, and I love teaching online. I didn't think I would love it as much as I do. I had to start teaching online during COVID. Of course, all my classes at the college went online, so suddenly I was teaching like greenhouse management online, which was a challenge. But through the process I learned how to teach online, and I learned that you can really create community in these online spaces, which I just didn't think you could, you know? Lisa was doing it, so I should have known you could. Lisa has created an amazing community, and all of Gardener's Workshop, you know? You guys are such a wonderful community that I'm glad I get to overlap with a little bit. But I am planning a few things for up here in Oregon, my farm in Oregon, like a mastermind for like intermediate and new flower farmers. We did one last year with really advanced experienced flower farmers. Ellen Polishuk and I taught that. Really wonderful. And this year I'm planning something smaller for newer people here in Oregon, as well as some more like business development stuff. So stay tuned for that, or reach out if you're interested in doing that. But yeah, I love teaching in person and I love teaching online. It's a nice change of pace to jump back and forth between both. What type of raspberry, someone asked. So a lot of people will really just recommend you use a thornless variety, and Joan J is like a classic thornless raspberry variety. You can get it from Norse Farms in Massachusetts, Nourse. I think it's in Massachusetts, my home state, by the way, Commonwealth. They are still selling them. I actually just bought some, and we're planting probably like 300 of them next week. They're arriving next week. So Joan J is a great variety. However, any kind of raspberry, if you're cutting it when it's young enough, the thorns aren't that big of a deal. So you can harvest it with big thick gloves, and as you're cutting it, you're just stripping it with your gloves, just a quick strip, and then that's it, and it's good enough. I have kind of like disgusting rough hands, so I often am cutting it without gloves, but other people are like, what are you doing? So if there's a variety that does well in your area for berries, like that's going to be great for foliage. The thing is, you can't really go wrong. In my experience so far, I haven't gone wrong with any varieties. Whether it's something unnamed that I buy from the local nursery, or there's some raspberry that was already established on our farm in Oregon when we bought the place. It was not a farm, it was just a little homestead with not much planted, but there was some raspberry, and I cut that like crazy, and it's amazing. So really any kind of raspberry is going to do well for you. But here is the secret. So when most of us start growing raspberry, we grow it the same way veggie growers would, or home gardeners would, right? We usually plant like one row of it. I'm always trying to act this out. One row of it in the middle of a bed, and then maybe we trellis it. And that's how you would grow it for berries, right? So you grow like big, long, tall canes that branch, and then you're cutting off of them. But you can actually plant them much more dense in a bed. And I learned this from Raindrop Farm and Jello Mold Farm, who grow them this way up here. So you can plant them in a bed like 4 rows apart, like, I don't know, a foot spacing in row. You can even, put them closer than that. Of course, they're going to sucker, they're going to fill in space. So you can plant them pretty far apart if you're trying to save money, and they will eventually fill in the bed. But if you want to jump in and have kind of like a full bed from the get-go, you could plant 3 or 4 rows in a bed, spacing them kind of the way you would like zinnias or something like that. And they're going to grow a beautiful, dense bed of foliage. From afar, it's going to look like a bed of mint or something. And you're going to be cutting those stems all the time as soon as they're tall enough to cut, like 12 inches, 16 inches, whatever. So they're going to keep regrowing from the base. It's going to be lots of new green, lush growth, which actually still holds up pretty well in my experience. And they're not going to get crazy and big and towering like they would if you were trellising them down one line of one bed. So it's just another way of growing raspberry specifically for the foliage. And for me, we still see a lot of berries on those just for like snacking, because we don't get to every stem, So maybe I will wrap up here. Thank you for listening to my long talk on pricing. I'll just circle back and give you like a last thought on that. I'm not going to say don't overthink it, because obviously my answer about how much to charge for your flowers is a long enough answer that I have overthought it and I continue to overthink it. So I'm not going to, I want to be a good example and not tell you that we don't all overthink it. But I want you to just be, again, you should feel, I think this is pretty true in the beginning, you should feel like, ooh, are people going to pay this much for my flowers? If you're feeling that feeling, you're probably inching towards the right price, you know? And we could make some blanket statements and say that, like, if it's a filler or a cheap foliage or something, and you're selling at like a farm stand or a farmer's market, maybe you're gonna charge around $1 a stem for that stuff. If it's like a focal or a more specialty flower, maybe you're gonna charge $2 or $3 a stem. If it's something really special like a garden rose or a peony, maybe you're gonna charge upwards of $5 a stem. And of course, this is different in different areas, places with really short growing seasons, with no competition for flowers, where it's really hard to grow these flowers, you probably can charge more. So there's no blanket statement, but you can think of it that way. You don't need to be picking it apart and deciding, okay, I'm going to sell bupleurum for 89 cents a stem and ranunculus for $1.79 a stem. I want you to round up and round down to the nearest dollar. And just think of it like that. Things that grow really easily, really abundantly, probably you're going to be pricing those towards the lower end of the spectrum, like, again, maybe around $1, and then it goes up from there with the more specialty, the crop. And of course, eventually we want you to start thinking about your cost of production and kind of weighing that against the local going rate and kind of the perceived value and what you can charge for your customers. And the great sweet spot is finding the crops that you can grow really easily and profitably, but your customers still will pay a lot for. And in that like delta there is where the profit is, right? You produced it for not much, they're willing to, that's where you go, in the middle. All right, thank you guys. This has been really fun. Love seeing you all. Come follow me at Flower Farming for Profit. And yeah, check out my course with the Gardener's Workshop. It's a short course on farming profitably. I love it. It was really fun to make. And I just love working with these guys. So nice to see you all, and have a great day. Don't be strangers. Bye.